Hello, and welcome to the ARC Automation Studio. I'm Chris Kinane, Senior Analyst here at ARC. Today, we will be discussing the supply chain collaboration networks market. Joining me today is Steve Banker, Vice President of Supply Chain Services at ARC, and he's just completed a study on this topic. Thanks for joining us in the studio today, Steve. I have a two-part question for you to kick things off. First, what is a supply chain collaboration network? And second, how do you define the supply chain collaboration network market segments?
Thanks, Chris. A supply chain collaboration network is a collaborative solution for supply chain processes. It's built on a public cloud, a many-to-many architecture, and it supports a community of trading partners or third-party data feeds. So traditionally, when we thought about networks, we've thought about different parties collaborating through the network. I think what's new in supply chain management is we have much better access to all sorts of data feeds that could improve supply chain processes. So these data feeds can be fed up into the network, and all the participants in the network can access those data feeds. As far as defining the market segments, we took a SCORE approach in this market study. So SCORE is plan, source, make, deliver, returns. But we added a couple segments on supply chain risk and supply chain finance. And these segments, you can think of them as messaging formats. In some cases, these segments are actual applications, for example, transportation management.
This certainly sounds like an interesting topic, which makes me wonder, how come I've never heard of this solution set?
Well, astute question, Chris. Well, it's not a new solution set, but it is newly named. The new focus reflects the growing importance leading industry analyst firms attached to this solution set because it supports digital transformations in the supply chain realm. Gartner calls the market multi-enterprise supply chain business networks. IDC calls it multi-enterprise supply chain commerce networks. And we've tried to be a little bit more concise here at ARC. We call them supply chain collaboration networks. In short, it's fair to say that this is a newly named market rather than a brand new market. Existing solution sets that fall under this definition would include EDI vans, industry marketplaces, and supply chain applications that are built on public cloud architectures.
Why do you need a network to drive collaboration? And does a network have its own distinct advantages?
Well, Chris, networks do have distinctive advantages, particularly for multi-echelon supply chains and collaboration. So one example is it facilitates communication with everybody that's on the network. So if you think about EDI vans, if somebody connects to an EDI van, a company connects to a van, then the next company that also connects to that network finds it much, much easier to integrate with other people on that network. Another advantage is partner management. So if you think about sourcing situations, there may be forms of information that you're looking for from potential sourcing partners. You might, for example, want to know if they're a woman or a minority-owned business. Well, if this data is stored on the network about that company, then anybody that's looking for a sourcing partner can access that information, and that company is not continually having to fill out that same data sheet over and over again. In transportation management, we've seen benchmarking that's using the network, and I think that ability can apply to other application areas as well. But for example, everyone that uses a network agrees that their data can be used as long as information about them in particular is kept private. So if I'm looking for a load between Chicago and Seattle, for example, I can go on the network and I can use the benchmarking data from everybody that's traveled on that lane in that network solution. And I can see that if I have this price, it's a really good price. If I have this price, it's average. And if I've got this price, it's a bad price. Networks are also a really good way to leverage third-party data. So, for example, risk information. You might want to know all sorts of things. Like, for example, a port fire at the port of Los Angeles. There are applications that are continually scanning hundreds of thousands of news sources and categorizing threats, pulling it into the network, and then the network understands everybody on the network that would have a reason to want to know that piece of information because their shipments flow through that port. And finally, it's a collaborative system of record. A lot of times there's finger pointing in supply chains where a company says, I shipped you this, and the other, their customer says, no, you didn't. You ended up shipping 5 short, and it gets into this blame game, and, I'm right, you're right. But the network can serve as a system of record where all the interactions between those two companies are not in their own applications. They're stored up in the network to be viewed as a source of truth by all parties to a transaction.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us today, Steve. This concludes our presentation on the supply chain collaboration networks market. Listeners who have any questions or would like additional information should contact the study author directly or reach out to a client manager here at ARC. Thank you for your attention and have a great day.